It's the show Agent Orange / Adolf Twitler would love to shut down.
So here's the story, folks. I am the least black person that you've ever seen in your entire life. In fact, we did very well relative to racist people.
It's the no bullshit zone.
It's called fake news.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
I know who you are. Just wait.
On the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome to it. Boy, do we have a lot to cover today. Mostly about the world of entertainment and sexual assault with a guy that's actually been following that with me for quite a while. Not because he's under any speculation of any cases. Before we get to him, though, let's talk about me. This is my show. I'm a critical thinker, problem solver, guy just left of normal insane, but always centered in common sense and found at my website, shaggyjenkins.com. This guy is a host of his own show on the Pacifica Radio Network. He is a writer, director, former stand-up comedian, and host of the Ron Pertee Show. Give it up. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Pertee.
Hey, Shaggy. Hey, everybody. Look, I'm back on video, and I'm ready for when we talk about R. Kelly. I have my umbrella.
Oh, boy. Okay, well, let's get into kind of some stories before we get to R. Kelly, which let's just go ahead and say that if you are talking about anything over the weekend, every single person that went through and watched the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, Ron had a little bit of the same shocked-faced reaction. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about another, well, two-time Oscar-winning star that has, as we've said in the past, some ties here to where this show is broadcast from, Maui, and definitely some ties to sexual assault. Ron, yesterday in a Nantucket court, they saw the appearance of Francis Underwood. I mean Kevin Spacey. How much do you know about this case?
I don't know a whole lot, but well, let me get my ring on. You didn't really see me die, did you? No. I haven't been following it much because he's one of those kind of actors that kind of broke your heart because he's so good, and deep down you always knew that he was a homosexual, and that's fine. You know, be a homosexual. No one's gonna fault you for that. However, if you use being a homosexual as a beard, as it were, to cover up for the fact that you were doing some bad stuff, like touching underage people, it breaks your heart, and you just kind of want to, wipe them away. Like with Louis, you're free to say what you want, sir, but you're a comedian. Just make sure it's funny.
Yeah, and when it comes to the Kevin Spacey story, this is the not-so-funny part about it, because we talked about this on our last segment together, where that weird video came out of Kevin Spacey doing the whole, I know that there's guilt without blame and jury, and the whole Francis Underwood character thing in his defense of this whole case. But look, a couple of weeks ago, I think it's Michael, how do I say this, Giardino? Yeah, I think it's...
I think so.
Yeah, Giardino, yeah, but he is the guy that said, look, there's going to be some charges pressed against Kevin Spacey. And of course, at that time, a lot of people were like, oh, Kevin Spacey, no! But we had already had Anthony Rapp and a bunch of other people come forward. And, of course, I talked about the allegations that while he's here on Maui, yeah, he wasn't exactly kind of a smooth criminal either. But, Ron... here's kind of one of
that's a nice little segue into another person who was accused of touching minors.
Yeah. Oh boy. You know, how long before we find out that all of entertainment is just a cesspool of evil people?
You know, it's funny. The only talk show host, which is what we are essentially. Yes.
Okay.
The only talk show host who I remember being really nailed with any kind of issues of impropriety was David Letterman. And when he did it, he came out and he admitted it. And when he came and got out in front of it, it all went away.
Yeah, I mean, it did have dire consequences. Let's not get it wrong. But at the same time, when Letterman came forward and said, "Look, I'm about to be blackmailed, so I'm going to tell you exactly what kind of bad stuff I did." However, it's kind of like catching Hitler robbing from a candy store. Yeah, you caught the one thing, but at that point, you're celebrating that you caught him. You don't know about all the other stuff he did outside of the candy store. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's the thing is either talk show hosts are really good at hiding it and covering it up, or Letterman really isn't that bad of a guy. You know what I mean? Because I think this is going to sound so bad, but talk show hosts are just too busy to do anything.
Okay, I'll give you that. Let's see, how many? Oh, yeah. Okay, I was thinking how many hours I had to put in to do this 1 hour broadcast.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, it's a lot. But this is the thing that I kind of want to mention about the Kevin Spacey case, because he's been trying to avoid any sort of connection to this. Of course, about a week ago, applying to the court and saying, just because of my fame and fortune, I should not, it's Foghorn Leghorn. I should not.
A little off there.
Just a little. But it's more along the veins of, I shouldn't be there because I'm too famous. It'll acquire too much attention for this already contentious case. And because I am such a figure of notoriety, any sort of my actual physical presence could actually make this case unfair. What do you think about that?
I think it's a bunch of BS.
It does seem like Kevin Spacey was trying to avoid the limelight associated with being accused of what amounts to sexual battery against an 18-year-old.
Yeah, now see, when I heard the story, I thought he was under 18, which made everything even worse. But if we're looking at an 18-year-old, I mean, that kind of, and I'm not diminishing what he did, and I'm not condoning what he did, but doesn't that kind of lessen the charges a little bit?
Well, sexual battery is sexual battery, Ron.
Right, but sexual battery of a minor is far worse.
Yeah, it is. However, look, the thing that
Why
we
do
learned...
I sound like I'm on Fox News now? What is wrong with me? Bad Ron.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, boy, we are going to have a talk during the break where it's like, Ron, did you really take the... Okay. But here's the thing. Ron, when it comes to Kevin Spacey, he is not the only guy that has a reported history of sexual assault and battery. And it seems kind of odd because we've got a couple of more stories that we got to talk about today along those same veins. It seems kind of odd that Kevin Spacey is the one that is closest to prosecution. Does that make any sense?
That's the weird part, is that I think I know where you're going with this, but the one guy who should be in jail right now is still walking around free. And I'm ready for him. I have my umbrella.
Yeah, because let's talk about that story. Look, over the weekend, for people that are not informed, and trust me, I have been with hip-hop radio way back in the day before I was... okay, go ahead and let that mental image sit in, that I was with hip-hop radio for years, and that, yeah, I left hip-hop radio to go into talk and all that. Okay, but... actually, I went from hip-hop to reggae to talk. Long, convoluted story of my life. Getting back to the point of this...
go back and listen to my interview with him on the Ron Pertee Show, and he'll tell you all about it.
Yes, you can. And you can catch that online. Just go look for the Ron Pertee Show. It's the very first episode. Here's the thing. Ron, a long time ago... oh, am I singing a song? A long time ago...
in a galaxy far, far away?
No, in a radio station far away. It's a hip-hop station that no longer exists, but we had a promotion back in the early 2000s, right after, I want to say right after the single Step in the Name of Love from R. Kelly came out. Now, at that time, he was already under heavy investigation for the infamous Pee on You videotape. But here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. Before Dave Chappelle made that into a meme, it was kind of a scary, scary case. And when it came to this promotion at our radio station, we had a staff of about 20-something people, and we were told, hey, this is a promotion in support of R. Kelly's song and music video, Step in the Name of Love. He will not be there personally. However, the choreographer from the music video will. And hey, if you guys want to jump on board, let's do this. A lot of us said pass because of the things that we knew back then. And Ron, this is the thing. Some of those DJs back then in the early 2000s were telling me stories going back beyond the age of, oh my God, he married a 15-year-old. That's the Aaliyah story broken by MTV News. But going even further back of a pattern of one Robert Kelly being a sexual predator, specifically one for underage girls. Now, Ron, I'm going to ask you a painful question because I know that you're not really the demographic of the Lifetime Network, but here's the thing. What do you know about R. Kelly's history before we actually talk about everybody's reaction to the show Surviving R. Kelly?
Well, first, I think that Step Into Love, is that the name of the song? Should have been, it was really about stepping in a puddle of his, well, you know. I don't know much about him because I'm not a big hip or hopper. I'm more of a rock and or roll type person. I have my hips and hops that I enjoy, but I tend to shy away from people who are mired in controversy. As it's like the episode of South Park when Mr. Hanky just got really, really bad and nobody wanted to be around him because they were afraid they'd get S on them. Because if you hang around somebody who is covered in S, you get some on you.
Well, this is the thing about the whole R. Kelly, Surviving R. Kelly documentary. In 6 parts, they basically laid out the case of a guy that does habitually take advantage of underage women through the guise of his fame. And within, well, I want to say it wasn't just Black Twitter this time. It was all of Twitter. Everybody kept coming forward and saying, oh my God, I can't believe these things about him. But Ron, I want to bring up something that's kind of troubling. There is the other side of this story, okay? Robert Kelly himself has never really been convicted of a crime. Now, he was brought forward on those charges way back in 2002, 2003. He was brought forward on those a long time ago and was eventually acquitted. Now, the girl that he committed those acts with, to this day, according to the documentary Surviving R. Kelly, is kind of a mysterious player in his sex cult that he has set up. Now, Ron, the scariest thing about this story isn't just what is happening. It's people's reaction to it, because some people in the aftermath of watching all of these heinous acts went out and started downloading and listening to his music in record numbers, therefore increasing his revenue streams, and the internet kind of collectively scratched his head. But then there's the other side of this, where women, and this is the question I've got to ask you, because as men, we don't understand women, and I want to make this abundantly clear with this question. Ron, women are getting online ever increasingly and saying, I don't care if R. Kelly is a bad person, I'm still going to listen to his music, I'm still going to lust after him, insert something here. They're going into patent defenses of their love of the artistry of R. Kelly and not the monstrosity that is Robert Kelly. What do we think about this?
I think it's dumb. And I think him using his artistry, or whatever you want to call it, if him using that is what leads into his monstrosity, because he uses his artistic nature. If you're not watching and just listening, I'm using the air quotes.
Air quotes.
Yeah, he uses that to get people where he wants them, and uses his power over them. And that's why I don't get people.
Well,
people are stupid.
Well, the thing about that people being lauded with R. Kelly's power and basically, going into subservience, a lot of Twitter kind of reacted, and a lot of the public reacted with, how could, and this is me doing the air quotes now, how could anybody actually be that dumb? But when you watch the documentary time and time again, you see that this guy does have a powerful artistic charisma that he has managed to parlay into, and I'm not making this up, some 2 decades, almost 3 decades, of avoiding charges as a sexual predator. And this is the crazy thing. Ron, to this day, other artists still defend him, and people that even know things about what he's done, his pattern of behavior, they don't want to come forward because they're afraid of the artistic backlash from fans of R. Kelly. Now, do we have a problem with toxic fandom in America, or blind fandom, I should ask?
Yeah, we do, and it's basically this. It all goes back to Star Wars, okay? Let's say Last Jedi comes out and you don't or you like it a whole lot, right? Someone says to you, yeah, well, if you like that movie, you're not really a fan. Oh, okay.
Okay, I got
all
that.
Right, well, let's take the other option and say that you didn't like The Last Jedi, and you express it. Hey, I didn't like that movie. You're not a real fan.
Okay.
All right? And then plus, if you go to, I remember when the trailer for Last Jedi came out, the little teaser where Luke says it's time for the Jedi to end. Okay? One of the guys on Collider, one of these jockstrap wearing, cultural appropriating idiots, says you have to like it because it's a Star Wars trailer.
Okay, but that's just it. When you're talking about something like that, I'm going to parallel this with the R. Kelly story. That's right. What a lot of people do when a new song comes out, when they hear R. Kelly's tour is coming through. It's, oh, I know these bad things about him, but it's R. Kelly. How do we make the leap of logic from this is a bad, toxic person and their artwork?
Sometimes you just can't separate them. For example, I am not a fan of Eli Roth as a person. He's never done anything super bad, but because I don't like him, I won't watch his movies. That's a personal choice I've made. Now, that's just a personal thing. When it comes to something with R. Kelly, where he's turned himself into this cult of personality, almost Charlie Manson-like, where people still love him no matter what he does. That's something that people need to take a closer look at and stop just following blindly. I mean, it's like when the walking corn dog with hair got up there and said, I could go out on 52nd Street and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't drop a single person in the polls.
I know. Now, this is the thing about what you were just saying there, because here's the scary, scary, scary part. America has had a history of doing this since way, way back. Let's not forget, Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin, 15-year-old cousin, Elvis.
I think she was younger than that.
No, she was 13. She was 13 years old. Elvis Presley married a 15-year-old. There was all the allegations about Michael Jackson. Let's not forget that one of the greatest rock bands of all time, Led Zeppelin, even had one of their prime members, Jimmy Page, kidnap an underage girl for sexual purposes.
You expect that from Jimmy Page, though, I think, because, he is into witchcraft.
Okay.
He's probably just going to sacrifice her. That's all.
Yeah, but then there's tales and tales and tales of bands like Van Halen engaging this kind of debauchery and others since time immemorable. in the music world. So, Ron, I'm going to ask a question that is a little off base, but maybe it's time that somebody ask it. Why are we so hypocritical about holding celebrities accountable as people?
I think a lot of the times people will sit there and say, oh, well, they're a celebrity, they're eccentric, we have to give them some leeway. And you forgot famously how Ted bow hunting Nugent has a woman sign her kids' parental rights over to him because she was underage, and he wanted her to go on tour so they could do naughty things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ted was essentially sleeping with his adopted guardian daughter. Yeah,
basically. It was like one of those. It was like one of those clips that you see on Pornhub.
That's the bad thing when you're
not that I watch that stuff.
Yeah. But whenever you create your own genre and subcategory, that's rock and roll, and that's the sick thing about this whole culture. Ron, R. Kelly is probably going to escape these charges for quite some time, despite the docuseries, and the creator of the docuseries even said that, look, I want to make people aware of a basic fact. If you're a black woman and you're being victimized in the United States, nobody cares about you. And I want to ask you, is there a chance R. Kelly could get off of this whole big cloud of allegations, which I'm going to just tell you, a pattern of behavior exists, and the man really needs to be brought to trial. So, is there any hope of justice because the victims here are women of color?
If he's eluded persecution this long, I don't, and I hate to say it, but I don't think there's any hope.
This is the thing about this story, too, because as much as I talk about R. Kelly and some of the past atrocities that he has done, let's also bring up a story over the weekend that is like, oh my God, is this our new R. Kelly? Video footage over the weekend surfaced of a performer on stage pulling an underage fan onto the stage with him, groping, fondling, and kissing her. And here's the thing. There was actually a song way back in the day by a terrible hair band called 17. She's only 17.
You mean Winger?
Yeah, Winger. Well, Drake found himself living the Winger lifestyle, and video of that has surfaced. And here's the thing. Just like with the case of R. Kelly, a lot of people in the hip-hop community have went radio silence in talking about Drake because they don't want to laud on the attack of another artist, but at the same time, video footage exists of him doing something bad. No charges have been pressed at this moment. Ron, is it kind of a pattern in the music industry that you feel almost entitled? People like R. Kelly, people like Drake, people like Jimmy Page and Ted Nugent. And do you just feel so entitled that you don't think the law applies to you?
Yes, that's pretty much what it is. And I feel it's so weird because Drake was one of these, not one of mine, but in just speaking in general, he was kind of like a childhood icon because he was on Degrassi. For people who don't know, he was the one that got shot and was in a wheelchair. And it's just all the goodwill that he had by putting out that Degrassi reunion video that he did with Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes and all those people. Any goodwill he had from there is completely gone now.
Yeah, and this is the bad part about the goodwill of Drake. Remember, not too long ago, Drake had this whole music video called God's Plan where he went around with stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of money, just giving them out, buying people college scholarships, buying school supplies, buying homeless people meals. And I mean, he was really trying to perpetrate this image of a good guy.
Yeah.
That matches the R. Kelly playbook. because at the time that the sexual allegations were out there against R. Kelly, he tried to go back to his Space Jam days and say, hey, you know, I'm the I Believe They Can Fly guy, and started doing that song in churches, specifically the ones in Chicago and around that area, to kind of drum up this good guy nature behind Robert Kelly. Do you think the same will work for Drake?
Honestly, I think since Drake doesn't seem to have like this huge history of doing things like this, that I think as long as here we go, I'm gonna sound like a damn defense attorney. As long as this is the only time he gets caught doing it, eventually it's gonna get pushed under the rug. Whereas with R. Kelly, he's got a black book full of people. You know, I mean, and Drake should check his library records to see if he checked out the book How to Urinate and Get Away with It by Robert Kelly.
This is, you know, all joking aside, it does seem that Robert Kelly did put out the playbook of sexual exploitation, and Drake found that book and is now following it. And the bad thing is that no matter how much we talk about it on the show, Rod, it's going to be a long time for justice to come for Robert Kelly and the like.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, when we come back, we've got to talk about a little bit of mystery surrounding the president and the way he acts. And, oh, God, we've got so much more. Stay close. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
I am making some...
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Dad! Okay, here we go, throw it! Yeah.
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Nice.
More news, less alternative facts. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network and other places. God, we are in so many places that it's hard to believe. If you want to find out any of those, go to our website, shaggyjenkins.com, or follow me on social media at Shaggy Live. If you missed the first part of the show, hey, it's easy. Just jump on Spotify and look for the Shaggy Jenkins Show. Joining me from his cozy couch in the Midwest of the United States, he is the host of his own program on the Pacifica Radio Network as well. And, well, you can find him pretty much anywhere fine internet is served. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for our Midwest correspondent, host of the Ron Pertee Show. It's Ron Pertee.
Wow, Bob Woodward is mad. Oh, we're back. Sorry.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. As long as we're reading into the Trump White House, Ron, we have to talk about this weekend of news. Now, I'm going to go ahead and prime everybody by saying, thus far, there has been no resolution in the stupid BS that we left last week when Ron was on the show about the government shutdown and all of that. However, when it comes to this week, a little bit of language changing has some thinking that the president might be willing to buckle. Ron, what do you think about the president calling it no longer a wall, but a barrier?
You can change the semantics all you want. It's still you holding the country for ransom until you get what you want, you petulant child.
Well, as he's throwing his temper tantrum here, the thing that we have to remember.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, punny, Shaggy, punny.
A quarter in the pun jar, sir.
So here's the thing. Donald Trump also seems to have a little bit of a problem with an investigation. And this is one of the interesting facts that I didn't consider. Ron, I want to ask you a little bit about the shutdown in the context of federal cases involving the President of the United States not being able to move forward during this partial shutdown. Now, I know that if a case has really heavy precedents, they'll make special arrangements behind it, but the people that are controlling what is precedent right now are kind of pro-GOP and pro-White House. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're pro-Trump. It just means that they want to protect their guy for the sake of image. Now, Ron, I gotta ask, because this is politics. This is my realm of wah-ha-ha-ha. God, this stuff is entertainment to me. But sometimes when you're watching this stuff, do you ever wonder who's writing this?
The best TV writer ever.
You think so? You think this is...
It's gotta be. You know who's writing this? Wrestling fans will understand this. You may not. But wrestling fans will understand this, and wrestling fans will totally agree with me. But you know who's writing this?
Who?
Vince Russo.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and throw a little shout out to the recently deceased Mean Gene, because this would have been a moment where he would have had a microphone in somebody's face going, "I can't believe what they're doing. You really took a pounding there in the legislature. They had you up against the ropes with this whole wall thing. How you feeling?" You know, I mean, I feel like Mean Gene should be here.
Mean Gene should have a microphone right in Trump's face. And I remember there's an old promo from WCW before they closed down, and he was just I think he had just had it. He was just like, I can't take it anymore. I'll take my guaranteed money, but I just want to go home. And he was telling wrestlers to shove things certain places, and I was just like, that's why you get the name Mean Gene, sir. And my one regret, and I'm going to put this out there, is I was from me to my laptop in front of me, away from him at Days of the Dead, and I didn't go up and say hi.
Well, you know, I would have been a little nervous too. But
yeah, that's like your childhood sitting in front of you.
The thing about this the whole shutdown, though, is Trump seems to be amping it up on purpose. Now, he has been escalating his fight with the Democrats, but kind of going into Tuesday evening, or should I say Monday evening into Tuesday morning, reports were coming out there, and keep in mind, I'm in Hawaii, so my news is a little delayed, but the big reports going out there is that Trump was starting to bend a little bit on something that he said he would not bend on. But when I look into the actual semantics and the things that are being said, he's really kind of drawn a line in the sand, and he's not going to back down as far as people notice on this wall. Now, Ron, my question to you is he doing this because he knows the more he keeps the government shut down, the more kind of fiery rhetoric he can inspire from his political opponents, the more the spotlight is off of him and his impending investigation report coming out from Mueller's special counsel?
But here's the thing, though, is he was on TV like a moron and said, fine, Chuck, I'll be responsible for the shutdown. This will be Trump's shutdown. Okay? Yeah. That's why more and more, the way things are playing out is this seems more like it's a wrestling program.
Okay, I'll give you that, but this is the thing that I've got to really bring up about that whole encounter. Ever since that happened, Trump and the White House have been trying to find a way to change everybody's view of what happened there into, no, the president actually said, you, Chuck Schumer, are responsible for me taking the blame for this shutdown, and that's what really... You know, sometimes I get headaches trying to follow the narrative.
Right here between my eyes, and it goes all over my head. and I have to take about 4 ibuprofen before it even dulls it, and then a gun to my head usually finishes it off.
Well, the thing that's kind of concerning about this story is that Donald Trump doesn't seem to be caring, empathetic at all towards these federal workers that's been laid out, going as far as to saying that he knows their political affiliations. Well, they're all Democrats anyway, saying that as a former landlord himself that has been the subject of multiple lawsuits with how he actually...
A slumlord, you mean?
A slumlord, thank you. He has told people during the shutdown, well, just go talk to your landlord and tell them that we're doing it for national security. I'm sure they'll give you a break on your rent. Besides all of that, one of the things that kind of came out that you found fascinating had to do with everybody's favorite season of the year. I'm not talking about Christmas, I'm talking about tax season. Ron, what's the White House saying about the IRS this year?
That you will get your tax return even if the government shut down. Even though they are running a bare bones operation at the IRS right now.
Now, the funny thing is about what you're talking about, bare bones. We mean barest of bare bones. Nobody's at the switchboard. The website hasn't been maintained, and there's backlogs and backlogs and backlogs of kind of audits and things like that. The normal minutia stuff that IRS handles that's stacking up. So even when the government gets partially funded again, and keep in mind, all of this talk is just going to have to come right back up in September.
Well, and here's the thing: the one thing I'm glad about though is that the people who are on Social Security aren't getting cut off. Because they need that money. You know what I mean? That's how they live, and there's no way that you can. So you can barely survive on what you get from that to begin with. So if they were to take that away from them, it's just...
It is a little extreme because here's one of the things that kind of got me about this story when it came to the IRS report from the White House. I'm still kind of waiting around for them to respond over tax questions I had a year ago. So I'm not seeing this as being something that's just going to get easily resolved. And for a lot of Americans, and this is the sad fact that we have to consider, during tax season, that's everybody's make-up period. It's when they use all of their tax returns to pay off all of their credit card debt that they incurred over the course of the last couple of months when they were celebrating with family, taking time off. You get the picture. It's everybody's stopgap. It's everybody's lifeboat for a lot of Americans. And now those returns getting stretched further and further out. And let's just be honest, the White House hasn't really been upfront with telling us what is and what isn't going to happen. So them saying the IRS is going to function and then the physical evidence of what the IRS is functioning at paint us two different stories. The most damning thing about this thing is, though, Ron, when it comes to all of those people that depend on their tax refunds, Donald Trump is just going to say, well, tough on them. They're probably Democrats anyway. And if they're not Democrats, they've all called me up. He's reiterated this time and time again. They've called me up and said, Mr. President, we support you. We support you. But, Ron, is there a lot of support from people that could possibly be held up during tax season for this whole border barrier, slat, wall, leveler, blinds, whatever?
Well, that's the thing. And Snoop Dogg put a video out. Did you see this? Okay, I'm going to have to paraphrase this, which will make the 4-minute video down to 30 seconds because he uses a ton of expletives. But you know what? Now that I think about it, the government shut down. So the FCC's not working, is it?
Careful.
Damn.
I'm just throwing that out there. Careful.
Son of a... Anyway, but no, basically he says anybody who's out there working for the government who supports Donald Trump, who isn't a member of his cabinet that's getting a raise, how can you vote for him in 2020?
Well, that's just it. Donald Trump says that the issue of national security is so pressing, is so important, that oh my God, everybody is going to support this, no matter how broke they get, no matter if their landlords tells them, hey, the rent's due. When the landlord hears that they're doing this in support of the border wall, well, they'll just understand and everything will be copacetic again. But
no, because they have bills to pay.
yes, they do, and that is the problem. We're dangerously close to the first batch of federal paychecks not being processed and going out. And as such, there is tale and stories, of people that are talking about taking their Christmas gifts back from their kids because they need the money because they don't know when their next paycheck is coming, canceling medical procedures because they no longer have, the money for the co-pays on these procedures because they don't know when their check is. We're wondering about whether or not they're going to lose their mortgage or anything like that because it's tax season, there's adjustments, and everybody's got bills due. So, Ron, realistically, how far can the president expect not to have a massive public backlash in light of all of these things?
If this goes on too much more, and I don't want to say it, but the Beatles sang about it. You say you want a revolution, we might end up with another Boston Tea Party over what he's doing. Because when it comes down to it, remember this, folks, there are way more poor people who are wondering where their next check's coming from than there are rich people who are wondering where their next check is coming from.
Yeah, and as such, this is kind of going to bring up an interesting dynamic. Because, Ron, when we talk about rich and powerful people, no one, as far as American politics right now, is more rich and more powerful than Vladimir Putin. And this is something that I have to bring up because Trump, in his defense of his southern border rhetoric, his shutting down the government, and all of the things that he's doing, he's actually started to kind of mirror and mimic Russian propaganda talking points. And Ron, I kind of wanted to bring this up with you because a very interesting story in the Daily Beast came out that asked a very honest question, and I know that story came out over the weekend, but it took me this long to actually definitively go, oh my God, there's not an answer for this. But before we get to the actual question they ask, Ron, have you ever wondered where the president's talking points are really coming from on this whole immigration thing?
Whatever the teletype that Putin sends him, whatever it says there.
Well, it turns out that they might not need a teletype, and I'll explain why in just a sec. But when Donald Trump had this presser last week where it basically devolved down into him screaming at other people about his border wall, rambling through things, using major amounts of expletives, and printing out an internet poster of him in a Game of Thrones-esque kind of pose to, I guess, seem imposing. During the course of that meeting, Donald Trump repeated a statement having to do with Afghanistan and Russia. And a lot of people were scratching their heads over why would the president be talking about Afghanistan and Russia during a government shutdown. And this is the thing. He was trying to illustrate how important national security was by saying, look at what happened when Russia did not consider national security enough. They were the Soviet Union, but then they had to go into Afghanistan to fight the terrorists, and because they weren't serious enough about fighting those terrorists in Afghanistan, the Soviet Union dissolved back into Russia. It was all about terrorism. Problem, even Russian historians are going, what?
Yeah, this is... I just... We're not in control of our own country anymore. There's a hot dog with hair. I'm sorry, a corn dog with hair, who is a puppet for Vladimir Putin. Let's just be real honest here. Well, plain and simple.
That's just it, because as much as we all try to be serious and straightforward, give us the evidence kind of journalist and stuff, there's one little event that happened ahead of all of this ramping up national security rhetoric and ramping up some pretty racist talk, and even claiming like a country like Montenegro was very aggressive and possibly a threat to world security. Those were talking points issued from Russia's government in their own country through their state media. Now, the fact that Donald Trump is mirroring them might have to do with a little meeting that happened right at the beginning of summer last year between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Now, let me set the stage for you. It was already, as far as the Mueller investigation, very much a known, in the words of Donald Rumsfeld, a known at that time that Donald Trump and the Russian government had some sort of crazy involvement with each other. Now, the scope and the depth of that involvement was not known. However, much to the chagrin of his White House advisors, damn near everybody in the intelligence community and the Department of Justice, Donald Trump went forward and said, going into Helsinki, you remember that meeting back at Helsinki? Him and Putin had the press conference together. He made that
no one was allowed in?
No one was allowed in before that press conference. And here's the thing. Ron, I'm going to ask you a very hardcore question here, because this is my Sherlock Holmes brain having a conniption. How important is it that we know what happened between these two men for 44 minutes in Helsinki?
It's vitally important. We have to know. There's no like, well, maybe we can get away with not. No, we have to know what was going on, because there's so many people who think that he's Putin's puppet, that we need to know for sure. This is something we have to know. We can't be beating around the bush now. We can't. No, we have to know.
Well, that's just it, because the people that quote unquote do know are Putin, his long-term personal translator, a appointed
that he doesn't need.
Yeah, I know. Putin speaks perfect and understands fluent English. He doesn't need an interpreter.
It's not even English. He can speak a ton of languages and understand a ton of languages. This guy's doing it's exactly 7 languages. This guy's doing it as a power play. He's a master manipulator.
Well, okay, I'll get to that in just a sec, because this is the thing. Donald Trump had an interpreter. Putin had an interpreter. And those two people are the only two people outside of Trump and Putin that knows what happens in that room. But I want to set the scenario for you, because you just brought this point up. Vladimir Putin, as a former lieutenant he was a low lieutenant governor, and then became the premier, that was communist titles. He became the president of Russia after going through the KGB, then the FSB.
He was the head of this. Wasn't he the head of the KGB?
He was the head of that. And as such, Putin's reputation has been always known as a master mental manipulator. This is a guy that has a long track record of being able to manipulate people so good they don't even know that they're being manipulated. And this is the part that I have to ask you, Ron. Could Donald Trump and his intellect stand up against a manipulator like Putin?
No, not at all. I look at Putin lately, especially now when you think about it and you compare him to American presidents. He is a more successful George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, I mean, he is basically getting away with all the stuff that George H.W. Bush wanted, and, well, let's just be honest, he's kind of rigged the whole election process. He's getting reelected is the next part of that whole story.
Yeah.
Here's the part that it's kind of scary. After that meeting, Donald Trump started down this road of repeating stuff from Vladimir Putin, almost as if during the course of that 44-minute meeting, he was given instructions on how to act for the next foreseeable future. And as much as people want to say, yeah, but that was a long time ago, and Shaggy, the pattern that you're laying out is way too long of a time span. It could be coincidental. The thing is verbatim what Putin has said about Montenegro, about Syria, about Israel, the Palestine conflict. All of that stuff has been mirrored almost like a parrot from the White House. So,
Yeah.
Ron, the sick thing is that a lot of times in history, it takes decades to find out what happened in rooms like this. But how much of an impact do you think those 40-something odd minutes between Putin and Trump had on America today?
It could be what we're due for the next couple of years. Like, he could have laid out the blueprint, Donald, what I want you to do, okay, I want you to bring the American people down to a point where they feel they have no recourse. In which case, I want you to sign executive order saying, I am new ruler of America.
Basically the blueprint to dictatorship.
That's a bingo.
But America is always built on checks and balances. And now with a Democratic-controlled House, a lot of people are saying, well, the chances of that kind of a massive movement is nigh. But Donald Trump is actually going to try to use an emergency action, that whole declare a national emergency, to bypass Congress and get the funding for what is seen by some people a needless structure on the southern border. Ron, this is a guy that shows no signs of slowing down, and in light of all of the facts that we know about people around him, Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos, let's not forget Paul Manafort, Carter Page. Oh my God, there's a very, very long list of people that are currently under indictment, have already pled guilty, and are cooperating with the special counsel. Ron, how likely is Donald Trump going to survive this year, especially with the question now coming up, not just here, but in other circles, what happened in Helsinki?
I don't know how he survives. I mean, but having Mike Pence as a president is just going to be way, way worse.
Yeah, it is kind of a scarier alternative. However, watching him during the ceremony, swearing in last week, that was absolutely hilarious. His facial reactions to some.
With the first bisexual female congresswoman, and how she wouldn't put her hand on a Bible. She wanted to put her hand on a law book. And the look on his face was, I need mother to hold me.
Yeah, it seems like there's...
Save me, Marlon Bundo.
There's going to be a lot of cuddling that night with the bunny. But, okay, I kind of want to wrap this up because we're going to have to leave here soon. But, Ron, in the grand scheme of things, and this is a very sincere question, how likely are we to know the extent of what Donald Trump and Russia's cooperation is?
I mean, let's be real honest. Trump is Putin's puppet, and that's all there is to it.
That's kind of basic and direct. And the bad thing is that you're kind of agreeing with people that have come on to national programs, and including former members of the intelligence community in the United States, and says the President of the United States acts like an asset of Russia. Scary world we live in. Hey, Ron, where can people check you out?
All of my old past episodes, social medias, and ways to support the show are over at ron.world. That's ron.world. And, new podcasts go up every Monday, but you can hear me on all sorts of stations. So follow me on social media, and you can find out where those stations are if they're in your area.
Yeah, and as for me, it's time for me to go. And, hey, until next time, try to keep your sanity. Love you, mean it. Kate and bye. We are out.